If you're a fan of Led Zeppelin, I think you're really going to enjoy this video. What I've got on the screen right now is a newspaper advertisement for the album Presence. Now, we kind of forget today how these things used to be done. When a band as big as Led Zeppelin would put out a record, they would take out newspaper ads just to let people know. Now, but it wasn't the band necessarily taking out the ad. A lot of times it was like a record store. And then what they would do is they'd say, hey, we have the new Led Zeppelin album and here's how much it costs, and just come down to whatever the record store happened to be. And then they'd list in the newspaper, all the different records are on sale, the new releases, that kind of thing. And this is an example of that. And this is so cool looking at this, especially when you start looking at the prices. But there's one thing that I'm going to share with you on here that I want to get your feedback on, and I think you're going to think that this is pretty cool. So, but before we go any further, let's talk about Presence for just a second. Now, I'm too young to have enjoyed Led Zeppelin when they were famous. By the time I figured out who they were and what was going on, they were already gone. Because I was, 10 years old when John Bonham died. And so it was when I started discovering Led Zeppelin in my early teens, they were long gone. But, of course, like so many of us, we started going back and we started listening to them and buying their records and just being so amazed by this incredible stuff they had. And Presence, depending on who you talk to, it's always been one of those albums kind of like, a lot of people don't know what to think about it. And I remember when I was buying records, that one was kind of always there. Sometimes you'd see it in the markdown bin. It never really seemed as important. And so let's just back up for just a second and talk about this, because there's a reason for this, at least in my opinion. When you go back and you start going through the catalog, like each one of those albums had at least had something on it that just made your life a little bit better. Like if I go back to Led Zeppelin 1, my life is slightly better because of the song Good Times, Bad Times. I remember hearing that the first time and just the energy that thing had. In the days of my youth, it was just so cool listening to Robert Plant sing those lines, and it was just, and the drums were so powerful. It was such an amazing song. And so your life is a little bit better that song is now in there, right? And then you get into Led Zeppelin 2, and just take your pick. But for me, one of them was Ramble On. Again, just this incredible song, the way it moved and flowed and the lyrics and Ramble On, it was so cool. The power in that thing. Again, my life's just a little bit better that song exists. And you get into Led Zeppelin 3 and then the Immigrant Song. Just like classic, near perfect Led Zeppelin execution and singing and lyric, and everything about it is just so... And when I say this stuff, like these are songs that I literally will go out of my way to go back and listen to. Like one day I'll just be thinking, I need to go listen to the Immigrant Song. It's just that kind of stuff. Same thing with Ramble On, Good Times, Bad Times. They have that kind of effect on you. You move into Led Zeppelin 4, or, it doesn't have a name. I understand that, but the one we know is 4. And again, take your pick on that one. But for me, one of them was Battle of Evermore. I will occasionally go, man, I just got to go listen to that tune. It was so good. And I'll just go, my life's a little better because that exists. You get into Houses of the Holy, and it's Over the Hills and Far Away. I love that song so much. I learned how to play the beginning of it, the acoustic guitar part on the guitar. And I probably... when I pick up the guitar, I play that one almost every single time I ever pick up an acoustic guitar. And it's just such a great piece of music. And my life is a little bit better because of it. And sometimes I'll go back and listen to that song. I'll just be thinking of it like, I got to go listen to Over the Hills and Far Away. And then Physical Graffiti, Kashmir. Maybe like the pinnacle of everything that they did, all brought together in one amazing song. The mellotron, the vocals, the lyrics, the guitar, the drums. Everything was so great. And it's another one that every time that thing comes on somewhere, you just have to stop and listen to it because it's that good. and you'll go out of your way to listen to it. It just, again, your life is a little bit better because you've heard that song, because it's part of your brain. It's in there, and you wouldn't want it removed because it's so good. But then you get to the album Presence, and I wanted, because I loved Led Zeppelin, I wanted to love that album. And then you listen to Nobody's Fault But Mine, and it's good. And the harmonica solo in the thing is just brutal. But it isn't something like, I need to go back and listen. It never strikes me that way. And Achilles Last Stand, granted, it's really cool. It's a great little piece. That's a terrible way to put it. It's kind of long. But it's a cool piece of music. But there really was nothing on that album that had that effect on me that all those other albums did. And so for me personally, that album sounds a little bit like pre-production. It sounds like the kind of thing that you work. I was a professional musician for a long time, and we would do that. We'd go into the studio and we work through the songs and get an initial recording of them that was never intended to be the final recording. It was something you could show to a producer, work with an engineer, and say, "Hey, what do you want to do with these things?" and work on them. And to me, that's how a lot of the music on that album sounds. It just doesn't sound. It sounds like okay, but it just doesn't. And it's good, but it doesn't come anywhere near what the other albums did. Does that make sense? Maybe I don't know if that'll make sense to you. Some people will hate me for even making comments like this about Led Zeppelin, but I'm just being honest with you. That album, and I don't know, I think I bought it on cassette tape at one point, but I don't think it's even in my record collection right now. And just because it never did that to me. And so, anyway, those are my feelings about it. But I think you'll find this little because this advertisement now is about this album. And here's a couple of really interesting things to look at. So here's, first of all, the album cover, and everybody remembers that. And it has the object is what they call it, that little black thing. And they had all the pictures of it in these different places. And of course, you look at the album cover and you think, what does that mean? And you think, is it some sort of witchcraft or occult thing or whatever? We're just kids. We didn't know. And they actually made physical copies of this thing called The Object, and they gave it out to a bunch of people in the record companies and for promotion and that kind of thing. But anyway, that was something that kind of stood out. But look at these prices. Led Zeppelin 1, $397, 2, $397, 3, $397. And it goes all the way through Physical Graffiti to double album set, of course. And that one's $699. But what I want to read to you, and I think you'll love this, because this was apparently the marketing material that was created. I'm assuming by the record company, just based on the way it's written, as part of the promotion for the album. Oh, by the way, and here's the object right there. You can see on the screen, and then the little swan song logo for their record company. But it says Led Zeppelin Presence. And I want to read this to you because this is the marketing, the paragraph that kind of explains the album. And as I read this to you, and if you're familiar with Led Zeppelin and you've heard Presence, like, any Led Zeppelin fan has, whatever you thought of it, ask yourself how much you relate to this paragraph, which I think is really fascinating since this is kind of the marketing material for the album Presence. Okay, here we go. Presence was recorded in Munich after Robert Plant's car accident fractured his ankle and caused cancellation of their summer 1975 tour. The songs were written and rehearsed in California, and they combined Plant's most introspective and incisive lyrics to date, and the continued evolution of Jimmy Page's music. Achilles' Last Stand is a brilliant and complex long track, an instant classic like Kashmir, filled with remarkable rhythm changes and emotions. T for One is the most searing blues that Zeppelin has ever done. Overall, the album is the most hard rock the group has released in some time, and it will erase all doubts as to who and it says in, but it's probably supposed to be is, who's actually is the biggest rock and roll group in the world. A little typo there. Anyway, but does Presence erase all doubts who is actually the biggest rock and roll group in the world? Well, probably, but not because of the music. Mainly because they put the thing out, and I think it went platinum almost instantly, even though it wasn't very good. And that's a sign of a band that rules the world, that they can put out something that, in my opinion, is kind of substandard, and it still sells like crazy just because people are so excited to have anything that you put out. But as they sit here and they try to spin it in such a way that's like, hey, this thing's really awesome, and it's as good as Kashmir, which it's not. I hate to interject my opinion in this, but Achilles Last Stand, it's not as good. But how do you feel about it? I'd love to get your feedback on the album Presence, and also, do you relate to what I said earlier about part of what is so great about that stuff is that they had these songs that you want to go listen to, that they cross your mind every once in a while. Maybe I'm one of the only people that has that experience, but I mean, I'll be out driving and I'll be thinking, Over the Hills and Far Away, what a great tune. I got to put that on, and as soon as I get back to the studio, I'm throwing up the speakers and letting that thing out. But anyway, there's the marketing material for the album Presence, 1976, when that was when that came out, when this was printed here as this little piece of marketing material for Led Zeppelin, that as they were selling it there, and that proudly announces. Let me read that again here. Swan Song Records proudly announce the recording triumph of 76, and what they're talking about there is Presence. Do you think Presence? Talking to you right now in the camera. Do you think the Presence is the recording triumph of 76? And maybe you do, and maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I don't hate it. I just think that it doesn't deliver that thing that the other albums did that made them what they were. Anyway, I'd love to get your feedback. Of course, like the video, follow the channel. You know other people that like Led Zeppelin too that might enjoy seeing this advertisement that for the album Presence. And leave your comments. Love to hear from you. Anyway, with that, as always, have yourself a fantastic day.